what do you think the ratio is to people who genuinely mess up or people who are just lazy and are constantly messing up? Like, do you think there's a good distinction? Because
I
everyone
don't
messes
know.
up, but a lot of people seem to mess up more. And do you think that's just because people are lazy? You know, if you find yourself constantly messing up.
I don't know. I think I don't want to say today's culture kind of helps people to be lazy,
Well,
but
go ahead
it
and say
kind of
it if that's
does.
what you think.
Something I did learn when I was in college, though, that my professor told me one time was, if somebody tells you something, to do something, you need to listen to what they're doing and don't ask them again, because that's going to be annoying to them. You need to pay attention to what they're saying
Okay.
and be able to accomplish that thing without asking them over and over again what I need to do. And that's something that I've tried to do, especially with things that I've had to edit or just taking advice from people. If they give me a job, just kind of go and know what I need to do and get it accomplished. And then they can come back and be like, okay, it's already finished. I don't need to follow up with this person. But if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's my story. Do you want to?
That's good. I think going on what you were just saying though, I think that our culture is breeding people to
Yeah.
believe their worth. Now, if you're human, you have human value same as every other human. But if you think that, if you're of the opinion that you are valued, if you have the opinion that you are contributing well to society, to your family, to your friends, to your own personal freedom and personal responsibility for yourself so others don't have to take care of you,
Yeah.
there has to be a metric by which you gauge that. And if you are constantly making mistakes, I don't think people are always just naturally clumsy. I think there might be a pattern in people's lives that cause them to make mistakes. And then if you can figure out how to remedy that, then you will find yourself making less mistakes. You'll find yourself becoming more successful, and you're always going to make mistakes, but they're going to be more limited. And then you'll also start to see that you're not making mistakes based on what people ask you to do or little things here and there. You actually start to make mistakes out of that are actually more like failures, because failures are when you start to take big risks. And when you're taking bigger risks, like, for example, when I was trying to make a film on my own, that was a failure. It wasn't a mistake. It was a failure because I was reaching out and trying something new. I learned so much from that, right? When I was working on that other film, it was ultimately a failure because the project, although it got complete, the project didn't make its money back to the extent that it wanted to, or the extent that it was projecting to investors. It wasn't well made. It wasn't, visually pleasing or cinematic in any way, in my opinion, even though I was the DP. I would consider that a failure, but I learned so much from it. Do you think there's something to making a mistake and a failure, that those can be distinguished from each other? And do you think you can learn from mistakes, or is it just primarily learn from failures? Like, what do you think about that?
So I heard someone talking about it on a podcast where they said, as like babies, when they're learning to walk, they start to walk and then they fall and then they get back up and try again. And then we've kind of put this stigmatism, and once we get older, like in our 20s or older, that we're not supposed to fail anymore, or mess up, or anything like that. We're supposed to be perfect and get it and learn it in the first try.
Yeah.
I don't think that's how, as humans, we learn. I think how we learn is we do something, we fail at it, then we do it again, and we most likely fail at it again, but then we do it again, and then we actually like succeed and get it accomplished, or learn what we're trying to get accomplished. Yes, so it's so different. I mean, there's people in today's culture that they like perfectionists that kind of put this thing where you have to be so perfect. But then there's also, so they do their best. But then, yes, there is also lazy people. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's your okay, I'm going to use the word personality and say how you are. Are you a lazy person, or are you trying to like fail at something so you can learn from your mistakes? I mean, it really just depends.
I think there's an aspect of some things that are pretty. I think most of the time, most mistakes and failures you can learn from. I think if you're having a failure, then it's like I was saying earlier, you're going after something bigger. You're going after maybe a dream, maybe a big goal of your own. And when you fail, you're going to learn more. And I think you hold those a little closer to your heart, because it was like you failed at something you tried. Whereas a mistake was you just made a mistake and I won't do that again. But it was just a mistake, you know?
Yeah.
I think failure, they're kind of in the same family and they might be very close to the same thing. But ultimately, I think failure's reserved for those times when you're trying something bold. You're trying something, you know, you have ambition and you made a mistake in the pursuit of that ambition, you know?
Yeah.
And it became a failure. And you learn things more through that failure than you would just a common mistake. You know, it's like the difference between the common cold and COVID. You learn so much more when you get COVID than you do with the common cold, you know?
That is true.